This is Speak Blurman, and I'm here with a very special guest for DragonCon, Mr. Frank Conniff, legendary member of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 world. And I guess I want to start with that. You all are responsible for a wealth of media now, like half of the YouTubers of note who do movies, Nostalgia Critic, Red Letter Media, etc. They all call your show one of their biggest influences.
Right.
What is that? What do you think about that?
Oh, I think it's great. You know, I think we were one of several shows from the '90s whose sense of humor has influenced the current generation of comedy. The Simpsons being another. So it's great to be a part of that, and to have influenced people's sensibility. You know, it's really cool.
So you all are getting ready to reboot the show in some form or fashion.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, Joel is doing
Right.
that. I'm not a part of that.
Right. Well, more so as you look at the show trying to come back, do you wonder if there's a place for it as much today, considering like how much you all have done, how much you guys did in the past? Do you think the show will be able to capture some of that, or?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll capture anything from the past. I think that the talent involved with the new show is very first rate. Jonah Ray, who I know, he's a great guy, very funny, and Patton Oswalt, and right. So I have no doubt that people are going to really like it, and it's going to do really well.
Right. So what was the creative process like back then? Because we're talking about the 90s. So, we're talking about technological differences.
Yes.
Differences in culture.
Well, there was no internet back then.
Right.
So all of our knowledge that went into the making of the show was just knowledge we had accumulated through the years. And so you couldn't just automatically look everything up on the internet. But I think all of us who worked on the show were kind of just pop culture sponges, kind of. We just absorbed everything that interested us before we worked on the show. So, and we just were allowed to put that those references into the show.
Right. So a lot of the show was like improvisational.
Well, not really. I mean, it was improvisational when we were writing it.
Right.
Once we filmed the show, it was a very tightly scripted show. The scripts were tightly written. The movie segments, the movie riffing was all carefully scripted. There was some ad-libbing, there was some improvising involved, but we all were, we were all writers, and we all believed in writing and rewriting and really preparing for the camera. Once we were ready to go before the camera, we made it a point of being really prepared for it.
So what does that look like? You have, a bunch of funny, intelligent people, and did you all like literally sit down and watch the bad movie together? Wow.
We all would sit and watch it together, and we'd all just kind of yell out jokes, whatever occurred to us. Someone yelled out a joke, we'd pause the film, it would be typed into the script, and we'd move on. So that was a process. It would take us a whole day to get through one, 75-minute, hour-and-a-half movie. That would be an all-day process to get through that one film.
So the collection of people, because the show went through a lot of different iterations, different creators, different people on screen, not just in terms of the puppets and
right.
Joel to
different writers and different.
So was it easy to like reload, especially in the show lasted in different iterations over a long period of time?
Yeah.
Was it easy to reload?
It was it was relatively easy. I mean, the major change that happened when I was there was Joel left the show, and then Mike took over as host. Mike had already been the head writer of the show, so he was right there. We all knew him. It wasn't like a new guy showed up for work one day. So it was a pretty it was a pretty smooth process in terms of creatively.
Right. So another thing that I think is you are a big influence on is the idea that you would have I don't know if I call it prime time, obviously not prime time, but you have a block of TV late at night, not just like 9 o'clock. Late show, but no, I remember as a 13-year-old discovering, Misty, and it was like maybe 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And
they used to show it pretty late on Comedy Central.
And so you fast forward into 2000, and suddenly, yesterday we interviewed Dennis Snyder from Aquas and Hunger Force. Their show aired at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
So do you ever kind of reflect on not just the show, but also your position in pop culture? Modern pop culture.
It's hard to kind of, really. I know that the show has an influence on pop culture. I know that it's influenced other shows. A lot of great people, younger people now who do comedy, who write for television, who make movies, they all have on occasion mentioned the influence of Mystery Science Theater on them, and that's very gratifying. It's very gratifying to think that you've influenced people who then go on and do really good work, and they cite you as as one of their influences. It's very gratifying to hear that. I've heard, I do a lot of stand-up comedy in New York City, which is where I live, and I hear younger comics come up to me and say, I decided to get into comedy because of Mystery Science Theater, and to hear that, it's kind of mind-blowing, and it's really great, and and I was just one small part of that, but it's even to be a small part of it is pretty cool.
Right. So back with the creative process for a moment. I never heard of Gamera before your show. I would imagine.
So you blame us.
I would imagine a lot of people at the time were like. In fact, if I'm fair, when I paused on Mystery Science Theater, late night, the thing that caught my eye was Gamera, and then I'm like, what's going on at the bottom?
Right.
I asked that to say. Especially with modern copyright stuff. Like, I'm a big YouTube watcher, and every 6 months there's a kerfuffle on YouTube because of them changing their standards. Did you guys deal with, like, copyright or, rights issues when you use these old movies? Were they all fair use? Or
no, we paid for the rights to them. And I think in the subsequent DVDs that Shout Factory's put out, there's a few movies they haven't been able to put out on DVD because they weren't able to negotiate the new DVD rights for them. But, we did a lot of films that were public domain, but other films that were, there were companies like Sinister Cinema and Something Weird Video, they kind of specialized in distributing those kinds of films. And so we would pay for the rights. So it was all up on the up and up, it's a whole different landscape now where people just put stuff up on the internet and But back then, before the internet, you actually had to pay for stuff.
Right.
So, but one thing that we did that was very unorthodox was, and this was very much kind of we were being our own internet in a way before there was an internet. Was when we were first on the air, we were only on Comedy Central was only on in like a few markets. It wasn't it wasn't on in New York for years. I lived in Minneapolis. It wasn't on in Minneapolis. So we were working on the show that nobody I knew was able to see, and so the main way that a lot of people got to see the show was from their friends making VHS tapes of it and then showing it. Here at this con, I meet a lot of people that come up to me and say, they tell me their memory of when they first saw the show. A lot of times it's all about, my friend had tapes of it. We were in college. We'd wait for the tapes to arrive, and then we'd watch it every week. So, a lot of people, so that was kind of a very grassroots, it was kind of the show going viral in a way before
virality was a thing.
Right, and so as a result, we put a thing at the end of our show called, that said, keep circulating the tapes. So we were actually encouraging people to tape the show and to show it to their friends, which was I still, looking back, I don't know why Comedy Central allowed us to do that, but we did it, and it really contributed to a lot of people seeing the show, and it also, I think, contributed to why people are so loyal to the show now and have such a great memory of it, because they feel ownership of their participation as fans. In other words, it wasn't because there was a lot of hype, like there were a lot of commercials, there were billboards telling people they had to watch this show. There was none of that. It was all just your friend said, hey, this is a good show, you should check it out. Or you might accidentally come upon it one night. And I think when people get into a show that way, they feel a real connection to it, because nobody hyped them into watching it. They just kind of found it on their own.
Right, and it became, I would say there's probably a good reason you all are at DragonCon and cons like this.
Yeah.
You know, I won't call it nerd humor per se, but it's definitely a humor that an affection for fantasy.
Yeah,
sci-fi.
It fits into the whole fantasy sci-fi nerd world, and the nerds love us,
right,
which is great, and we're
loyal.
We're very we're very welcome at places like this, and it's really a great thing.
Right. So back then, though, you know, I'm a former teacher, actually, and I always would like be the head person over like anime club or different nerd sets.
Right.
And I always tell the kids when I was there, like, you guys don't realize how lucky you were. It was hard being a nerd in the 90s.
It was.
I'm sure it was harder back in your day, because you didn't realize how there was 10 kids just like you, even in your own school.
Yeah.
Let alone every school around the country.
That's a great thing about the internet.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, definitely.
People feel less alone, you know, not just nerds, but, you know, all kinds of people, maybe transgender people or whatever, and they live in a small town or something like that, and then by going on the internet, they found out, hey, there's a lot of other people just like me. That's like one of the best things about the internet.
Definitely. And you can connect to those different struggles. And you can connect to mutual love for pop culture or you know, comics, Game of Thrones, etc.
Yeah.
But you guys didn't know that. Like when the originator said we're going to make a show where a space janitor builds robots and watches movies from the 40s and 50s and 60s. What made you guys think that there would be an audience? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how, at any point in time did you say, how are we doing this? Where is this coming from? Like, especially as it started to take off, you know?
Well, we didn't. Well, first of all, at first nobody really knew there'd be an audience for it. You know, we felt very lucky. Before I was there, you know, it was a local. It was on a UHF station.
Right. You all started essentially in Minnesota.
Yeah, in Minnesota, and it was, you know, we were very far away from the epicenters of show business, and then we were lucky enough to, and you know, it was still a really low budget affair, and we were producing the show every week, and we were making, getting a salary, but it certainly wasn't a big salary, and so we just had no sense that this was going to be any kind of showbiz phenomenon, and you know, and I think if we'd only done it for a couple seasons, no one would have been surprised, you know. Right. So the fact that it caught on, and that people liked it, and I think we were lucky too that Comedy Central was just, you know, we were very cheap way to program 2 hours of television. So they were, you know, so if it didn't get gigantic ratings at first, I think they were like, oh, what do we have to lose? Let's just leave it on, you know. And that was really lucky, and so we had no idea. And also, you know, in terms of writing the show and everything like that, we didn't even think about the audience. We only thought about, do we think this is funny? And the whole show is just stuff that we thought was funny, and then we were lucky enough that a lot of other people thought it was funny too.
Indeed. I guess the last question is, like, is there anything you in particular are working on or moving toward? Are you kind of just basking in your glory and relaxing on the beach?
I would love to bask in my glory. I don't even think I've had one moment of that in my life. But I do have a lot of exciting things that I'm involved with. Traceable, you and I who is Dr. Forrester on Mystery Science Theater. We tour as the Mads. We do a live movie riffing show, and we perform all over the country, and we have a great time. We have great shows, so we're really into that. And I have a new book that's just come out called 25 Mystery Science Theater Films That Changed My Life in No Way Whatsoever. And it's a bunch of silly essays where I use the movies I riffed on, and then I riff on that in the book. So it's I'm getting a lot of really good reaction for that. And I'm on a Sirius XM radio show every day called Tell Me Everything with John Fugelsang. That's on channel 121, Sirius XM Insight for 3 hours. And I do stand-up comedy all over the place. So, I'm very actively involved in a lot of great stuff. And, my participation in Mystery Science Theater in one way or another kind of fuels a lot of things. And I'm just very grateful that I have that and that it's a part of my life. I never get sick of people telling me that they love the show, or, it's amazing. We get recognized now, and we get more reaction now for what we did in the early '90s than we did when the show was on the air. Because, like I told you, it wasn't on in a lot of cable network. But thanks to the internet, thanks to DVDs, Netflix, Hulu, all this stuff, the show is more popular than ever, and that's really cool and great. Like I said, I never get sick of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it was a pleasure meeting you.
Great to meet you.
Dream come true. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is Feek Blurman. Thanks, guys.